This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
We're so done with New Year, New You. This year, it's more you on Bumble. More of you shamelessly sending playlists, especially that one filled with show tunes. More of you finding Geminis because you know you always like them. More of you dating with intention because you know what you want. And you know what? We love that for you. Someone else will too. Be more you this year and find them on Bumble.
I'm Candice Lim.
And I'm Kate Lindsay, and you're listening to ICYMI.
In case you missed it.
Slate's podcast about internet culture.
And I am so excited because joining us on the pod today is a name you've heard in the credits, the producer of this very show, and a wonderful person to be around. It's Alexandra Botti. Hello, Alex.
Hello. What a joy to be on this side for a moment.
And it's also weird for me to have someone who is even less familiar with being on the show than I am. So that I'm kind of in this position of superiority right now. But as it is your first time, we have to ask the question that is asked of all first-time guests, which is, what is your first internet memory?
Okay, so the very first one is similar to a lot of people's, I think, who are elder millennials like myself, which is sneaking in and trying to dial up to AOL to see if I had mail in my new account. And of course, not ever being able to sneak because that thing was so loud, that dial-up.
Yeah.
But the funny side part of that is that when I first got an AOL address, our accounts got hacked.
What?
And yes, early on, we literally got hacked. Like there was a security problem with my first AOL account. And here's the crazy part. They sent us a new password in the physical US mail. Like I remember opening at this is like to this day, I think about this and how much the world has changed. I opened a physical letter that had a new password to use in it. And I'm ashamed to say I used that password for a lot of things for a long time.
Oh, no, you have to. I would too. Now it's like nostalgic. I remember we never got hacked, but I was constantly downloading viruses onto my Dell computer.
I was downloading Sean Kingston songs with LimeWire every single day of fourth grade.
Yeah.
How do I not have a virus?
I wish I could say it was music. It was outfits for my Sims.
Oh, amazing.
Cute.
Yeah, the creativity of the Sims community is unmatched, and I wanted it all.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, Alex, do you want to reveal what your email/username was?
Oh, absolutely not. Because I think
I can't get hacked again. I can't afford it.
I know.
Can't afford it.
It happened again like 20 years later. No, more than 20 years later. Oh my God. It's also like the stupidest password like no person would ever choose this password now because it's very easy.
Wait, so was it a word or what? Like I'm picturing how like one password gives you like a string of insane letters and numbers. But no. Mailed a word? Oh no, my God.
I was mailed a word with 2 numbers at the end.
Oh my gosh.
My father is my witness. He was there. This is a true story. Thanks, AOL. Thanks, AOL.
Awesome. Well, Alex, we have you on the show today. Not to hack you again, but because one of your extracurricular activities that I literally cannot get over is the fact that you are a linguist. Is this correct?
This is the big secret.
Yes.
It's true. It's kind of like I call it my secret other life because I don't talk about it all that much. But I basically tell people that I'm a sociolinguist turned journalist or audio producer.
Yeah. And like, it doesn't even stop there. You're also a ballet teacher. Can we just take a second to acknowledge that and how course that is?
But see, I love how everyone in podcasting, talk to anyone. They've got so many other cool lives going on. You guys do too. You
No,
guys
I think
do
yours
too.
are
You just-
cooler. Yours are cooler.
Well, yeah. I think a good example of that is, we're at our team meeting, sort of talking about what we did over the weekend. And I don't know, I watched Netflix and, got tasks done. And you were like, yeah, I was at a linguistics conference.
Yeah, so it is actually a pretty cool thing that's been happening in the world of linguistics. Basically, there's been a lot more acceptance of people who are working outside academia but have degrees in linguistics, like me. So I got to present some work with some colleagues about how linguistics serves us in our daily work outside of academia. And the very cool thing is that this conference that happens every year is also where linguists gather to vote on the American Dialect Society's Word of the Year. So this year I got to be one of those voters.
Whoa. And it's so funny because the second you say this, I'm like, oh, this is conclave. This literally sounds like Marriott conclave. But you brought this up in a team meeting because you had like a really interesting experience this year?
Yeah, can I just tell you, though, that I really wish it had any of, like, the dark thrill of conclave. Like, think instead of the Vatican, we're talking, like, a horribly, harshly lit Marriott ballroom.
Right.
That's the ambiance that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
But it's so fun, also, unlike conclave. Basically, nominations are open to the public for a while leading up to the conference, which always happens after the new year in January. And then when we gather, we narrow it down to the winners in a bunch of different categories. There's like most creative word of the year, digital word of the year. And then linguists stand up and they make their cases for different words and try to convince, all the rest of us of why one word should win over another. And then we vote on our phones for each category until we get to the word of the year.
I love this. And by the way, like, who are these people voting on word of the year? Are they teachers? Are they academics? Like, what do they usually do?
So yeah, there are about 300 people, and I would say they're mostly linguists, but they're also, students of linguistics and English and other subjects. They're anthropologists, they're etymologists. But the thing is, it's really not like a stuffy group.
Yeah.
These are people who are joyful about language change. They celebrate it. They track it as part of their lives and their work. So it's actually a really joyful thing. They want people to embrace it. I mean, most linguists that you will talk to will talk about language change and how the internet has sort of accelerated it in a really positive way. One example is one of the nominations that actually appeared in a number of categories was cooked. And the funny thing is that a lot of people stood up and said this was the most interesting word because it has sort of two opposing meanings. You can be like cooking, right, which is the positive side, and then you can be cooked, which is like, well, and that's the negative side. And this is the kind of thing people stand up and make these really intricate cases. And of course, sometimes they're brand new words that are made up, and sometimes they're words repurposed to fit our lives right now.
Yeah, I feel like you can see the joy in these words by the words that have been picked over the past all of them, but it's particularly in the past decade or so. It's like you said, the internet has really influenced what words get picked or where the words even come from. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, right, language has been evolving alongside humans ever since we have been talking. It's just that the internet has sort of accelerated this process and also made it a lot more visible, right? It's kind of like everyone is a participant in this in real time. And even just, as you say, the words of the year that have been picked in recent years really demonstrate that. But I think basically now you can't really talk about language change without talking about the internet. They're inextricable now.
I agree. And well, it turns out the word that the American Dialect Society declared as 2024 Word of the Year is one that we actually have a personal connection to right here in this room.
That's right. And Alex, we thank you so much for your service. But if it's okay, I think Kate and I are going to take it from here because on today's episode, we're talking about the words the internet gave us and where they came from. Plus, Kate and I will chat about what makes an internet word stick and our most and least favorite ones of late, right after the break. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there a part of your personal story you've been wanting to revise in 2025? Or maybe you're just ready for a plot twist? Every January brings 365 blank pages waiting to be filled. Life isn't about resolutions that fade by February. It's about picking up the pen and becoming the author of your own life. Therapy can help you write new chapters and create the meaningful story you deserve to live. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's fully online, making therapy more accessible, affordable, and convenient. BetterHelp has a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with the licensed therapist. If you feel like your matched therapist isn't the right one for you, you can easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/ICYMI today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ICYMI. This episode is brought to you by Built. If you earn points on groceries, travel, and practically everything else you buy, why not consider earning points on one of the biggest monthly expenses, rent? Built changes the game by letting renters earn high-value points on rent. There's no cost to join Built. And as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. Built points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world you can redeem your Built points toward. Points can also be redeemed towards a future rent payment and unique experiences that only Built members can access. So, if you're not earning points on rent, you have to ask yourself, why not? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/ICYMI. That's JOINBILT.com/ICYMI. Be sure to use joinbuilt.com/ICYMI to start earning points on your rent payments today.
Hey there! If you love our podcast, then maybe you should consider subscribing to Slate Plus to immediately unlock bonus episodes. Plus, you'll access ad-free listening across all your favorite Slate podcasts, including bi-weekly bonus episodes of our show. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page. Or visit slate.com/ICYMI Plus to get access wherever you listen.
And we're back.
So the first thing I should say is that I really love this stuff. I really love looking at new words, how words have evolved over time. I love how it's entirely driven by people. I love how the internet has made it really transparent to see how these words come about. But my dad does not.
First off, shout out Chris Lindsay.
We get into an argument about this pretty much every time I'm home. And I realize when I'm saying this, I sound like that one creepy family from that Gilmore Girls episode. People who know will know, but that's not us. That is not us. But it is something that comes up because he'll always have some complaint about some word that people are saying about how they're using it wrong. But because I was going to bring him up in this episode, like any good journalist, I did reach out to him for comment. And I got sort of explicitly his take, which is he believes that language is proscriptive, which is that language should follow a set of guardrails that codify how we speak. Basically that a word means its original meaning and it cannot change, which I clearly feel the opposite about. I think language is a reflection of how society shifts and changes and grows. And it's good to know that the linguists are on my side, and I will absolutely be playing that clip to my father next time I'm home.
Yeah, and it's interesting the way this kind of like comes into our timelines because, you know, every year you'll go on Twitter, you'll see like a new white smoke tweet in the air. I'm now learning is from the Marriott. And they'll be like, here's the new word of the year. But here's something I didn't know. There are actually a few key organizations that declare words of the year, and they're always kind of different. So we're thinking like American Dialect Society, the Oxford English Dictionary, Collins Dictionary, Cambridge Dictionary, Dictionary.com. They all have different selections.
And they've been doing this for a couple decades now. The American Dialect Society has been doing it the longest, I believe, since around 1991.
And now, before we reveal who won the American Dialect Society Word of the Year, can I please list some of the nominated words that are killing me? Because Alex, she shared with us like a photo of the list, and the nominees are all under categories. And so I'm going to list some of them because these are hilarious. First, under most fun while it lasted, Hawktua.
Of course. I don't know anyone who says that, by the way, like in earnest.
Right.
But they must exist.
And yet the linguists, they're really, they're listening to the podcast. They love Haley Welch.
Oh my God, yeah, I trust them. If they're on board with Hawktua, then I am.
Next category, political word of the year. And I am not joking about this, guys. One of the nominees, burrito taxi. Burrito taxi is considered
I need
political.
that explained to me.
So thank God that I'm really onto this side of the internet, because a burrito taxi, I kid you not, I don't even think it was a meme or a trend. It was literally like a text that someone sent someone referring to the fact that they feel lazy because every time they order DoorDash, they consider it a burrito taxi. A burrito taxi is coming to my door to deliver me burrito. And I actually thought that was really funny, but I didn't think people cared about it. And the fact that like the linguist not only caught onto it, but consider it political. I mean, another word that's in this category is Luigi, obviously referring to Luigi Mangione, which is really funny. Next category, informal word of the year, mewing and mog.
Also feel relevant to Luigi.
And then lastly, under most useful, lock in.
Locked in. Shout out to Davis Clark, who I think is a creator on Instagram who really brought that to life this year.
Kate, before we announce word of the year, I just want to like do some housekeeping, because I don't know if I can keep saying like word of the year, word of the year. Can we abbreviate it? Kind of like how like album of the year is AOD. Should we call it like WOTY?
Yeah, let's call them the WOTYs.
Okay. So Kate, who is the winner of the American Dialect Society's WOTY of 2024?
All right, I'm going to attempt a drum roll. Don't judge. This is my first drum roll. The winner is Rawdogging. Now, I can't claim to have fully invented rawdogging, and I never would. We might remember it as its more original meaning, which is to have sex without a condom. And so it's just kind of been extrapolated from there. But now it's sort of used generally, you know, to do something without any type of backup, comfort, protection.
Right.
One of the earliest times I ever saw it used in sort of the new way is in a tweet by Jabuki Young White in 2019. Nice. He described living life without therapy or medication as, quote, raw dogging reality. But I did write the piece for GQ that went viral back in June about, quote, raw dogging flights, which I can't say for certain, but I do believe is the first domino in this becoming word of the year.
And please tell me, raw dogging flights does not mean what I think it means.
So basically, one afternoon, I was scrolling on TikTok and I came across a video from this creator named West. And he had a few of these videos about how whenever he took a flight, the longest being 21 hours, that was from London to Australia, he would try to do this thing where he would sit in his seat. He would not turn on any entertainment. He wouldn't read. He wouldn't listen to music. In some cases, he wouldn't go to the bathroom. He would just watch the flight map. And then there are all these men in the comments like, I do that too. And I saw a few other guys making videos. And so I started asking around, and I actually interviewed Slate's Luke Winkie for the eventual GQ piece because he does a little bit of this as well, not quite as intense. But the word that West was using in his TikToks wasn't actually raw dogging. He was calling it barebacking a flight.
Oh, I don't like that. It's kind of like when people refer to sex as like the beast with two backs. I don't like this. Why is it getting worse, actually?
No, yeah. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was like, what's a better word? And so I just swapped it out with raw dogging in the headline, not thinking anything of this piece other than it was funny. And it just exploded. It was all over Twitter. Diplo posted about it on Instagram. The New York Times later wrote about it. So the fact that it was then debated conclave style by linguists is like more than I could have ever dreamed for it. I feel like a proud mother.
You're the proud mother of raw dogging, as you should be. I mean, look, the other words of the year, especially from 2024, they were just as online. You know, Oxford's was Brainrot. If you can believe it, its first use was in 1854 by Henry David Thoreau when he wrote, quote, "While England endeavors to cure the potato rot, will not any endeavor to cure the brain rot?" Oh my God.
R.I.P. Henry David Thoreau. You would have hated TikTok.
And I would have thirsted anyway. And now, brain rot is used to describe when the internet is ruining your brain, or like a piece of content on the internet possesses brain rotting qualities, aka it's stupid. I think it's definitely translated into bed rot, which is the religious sacred hour. For me, it's 3 to 4 p.m. when you sit in bed and just like scroll on social media.
Some other words of the year in 2024 include Brat, which is from Brat Summer, or Brat, Charlie XCX's most recent album. And then there was also Demure, which was given new life thanks to Jules LeBron on TikTok.
You see how I do my makeup for work? Very demure, very mindful. I don't come to work with a green cut crease. I don't look like a clown when I go to work. I don't do too much. I'm very mindful while I'm at work.
And then finally, Cambridge's 2024 word of the year is manifest, which used to just mean obvious, but now it's a verb for the belief that imagining and believing in something makes it more likely to happen.
And that's actually an interesting point. Pretty much all of this year's words of the year are words that existed before, but that we gave new meaning.
And the question is, can they last? And let's find out after the break.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states and situations.
The Apple Watch Series 10 is here. It has the biggest display ever. It's also the thinnest Apple Watch ever, making it even more comfortable on your wrist, whether you're running, swimming, or sleeping. And it's the fastest charging Apple Watch, getting you 8 hours of charge in just 15 minutes. The Apple Watch Series 10. Available for the first time in glossy jet black aluminum. Compared to previous generations, iPhone XS or later required. Charge time and actual results will vary.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/SBO. Terms and conditions apply.
And we're back. So before the break, Kate and I were throwing around some recent words of the year that are very internet culture-y, but as is so often the case, words that become popular online usually come from Black Twitter and other Black online spaces.
Right. And that can kind of be the problematic side of these kind of word popularizations that happen, because in some cases, we're taking these words out of their original contexts and communities, and perhaps we're doing that without a full understanding of them. And then in some cases, discarding them or changing the meaning slightly. And especially, you know, when it's done by a white community for a word that originated in the Black community, we don't really have any right to do that.
Mm-hmm. Woke is a good example of that. You know, its roots go all the way back to Black struggle and liberation throughout the 1900s. Then it became a hashtag in the 2010s, along with Black Lives Matter. But now the right uses woke as an insult. You can kind of see that growing use online.
In other words, they just kind of fall off. Like I think, Candice, when you and I were scrolling through past words of the year, the one that we both had a visceral reaction to was Merriam-Webster's word of the year in 2007, woot. And it's not just woot, it's woot with 2 zeros. When's the last time you said woot?
I've never used this word, but like, I don't know. How are we to know? Do you think that you will be explaining woot or rawdogging to your grandchildren one day?
I will absolutely be explaining rawdogging because of my pride, as they're sort of doing that meme of like, okay, let's get you to bed, Grandma. But I will be explaining that I wrote an article in GQ, but I take your meaning. And I actually interviewed a linguist about this last year. So I wrote a piece for Vulture titled, All the Internet Words We Added to Our Dictionaries in 2024. The linguist I spoke to, his name is Adam Alexic. He's also an author of the forthcoming AlgoSpeak, How Social Media is Transforming the Future of Language.
Yeah, and shout out to former host of this show, Rachel Hampton. She did a great episode on AlgoSpeak here back in September of 2023. Check it out if you like this stuff, because I'm really into this stuff as well.
So I asked Adam if there's any factors that can help determine how a word sticks and if it will stay around. And he says there's kind of 2. So one is the word needs to be unobtrusive, which essentially means it just needs to sound right. I don't have a more scientific explanation than that, but you kind of just know it when you hear it.
Yeah.
But if it stands out, aka is obtrusive, we're less likely to adopt it. And the other is that it fills a lexical gap. So basically, did we have a word for this before? If not, if this fills that need, then the word sticks around.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about rawdogging as an example. Did we have a word for this before? Unprotected, raw. I was taking this flight condomless, which I hopefully you are.
So I think it could stick because it arguably already has, since it did kind of exist before the flight of it all, because it fills a lexical gap in that we did need something to describe the broader phenomenon of enduring something without help or cushioning or guardrails. But I will say it's very obtrusive.
Yeah. You definitely have to watch who you say it around, because if they hear rawdogging out of context, they probably will think of it in its original meaning as God intended.
As God intended. God is shaking his head right now at this. But brainrot, I think, is a classic example of a word that is unobtrusive. It sounds right. It sounds like exactly what it is. And it fits a very modern need that there is no other word for. That's going to stick around in my non-professional linguist opinion.
Yeah. Probably same with like manifest. You know, that's a word that did exist prior, manifest destiny. But nowadays, it's kind of gone from noun to verb.
And then we get to Brat, which is another 2024 WOTY. I loved Brat Summer. 360 was my number one song on my Spotify Wrapped.
Same.
Yeah, this is no shade, but especially after the Kamala Harris of it all, the way it became associated with her campaign, it reminds me a little bit of Fight Song, which now if anyone who lived through the 2016 election hears it, it's a real trigger.
Yeah,
and I worry that calling something Brat evokes the same now very like dated, sad in hindsight era of American politics. I feel like I'm already using it ironically, which is how you know it's on the way out.
Yeah. And here's the real question, okay? WOTYs of 2024, they've been chosen, they've been locked, they have been white smoke screened. I know it is early, but Kate, do you think that we have already stumbled onto any contenders for Word of the Year 2025?
So yes, it's still very early, but if we do manage to call it in this episode, I think Alex should invite us to the Marriott next time is all I'm saying. But I went looking through Know Your Meme, which is a really helpful resource just to see what people had already been talking about this month. So obviously there's Red Note, which we spoke about in a recent episode. Then along with that, there's the term of TikTok refugees, which I could see sticking around, or the concept of saying goodbye to your Chinese spy. All those things kind of popped up this month. But while we were having this conversation earlier, Candice, you brought up a great point.
Oh, yeah. I kind of wondered if a non-English word has ever been selected as Word of the Year. You know, after Americans started joining Red Note, not only were they teaching Chinese users like American online slang, this is the raw next question, you're familiar, Kate, but Chinese users would then share some like Chinese slang in return.
It would be so funny if one of the consequences of the whole TikTok ban debacle, which led people to flock to Red Note, which is literally only in Chinese at that point, caused this like Chinese influence on internet culture in America. Therefore, a Chinese word becomes our 2025 Word of the Year.
Yeah. And so to go back to the original question that I asked, I actually have a great TikTok that may fill the lexical gap for us.
How to say raw next question in Mandarin Chinese? 无套下一个问题 无套下一个问题
So, Kate, I think what I'm going to say is that next year at the Marriott Conclave, we're going to be walking out with the Word of the Year, which obviously will be 无套下一个问题.
I love it. I'm going to start commenting that instead.
Okay, that's the show. We'll be back in your feed on Saturday, so definitely subscribe. That way, you never miss an episode. Leave us a rating and a review in Apple or Spotify, and tell your friends about us. You can follow us on Twitter at ICYMI_pod, and you can always drop us a note at ICYMI@slate.com.
ICYMI is produced by our resident linguist, Alexandra Botti, Candice Lim, and me, resident Rawdogging expert, Kate Lindsay. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer. See you online.
Or at the Marriott Conclave.
Yeah, so a student stood up. I don't think he could have been more than 18. And with a really serious face, got up to the mic and said, "Rawdogging is obviously the word of the year." Pause, because it's just so relatable. And the entire, and like with no context, not saying it's relatable outside of like, he just, and the whole, like linguists, old, young, every kind of person on the floor laughing. It was fantastic.